She didn't smile. She sliced.
Opens nationally on May 24th. Would you welcome, please, Grace Jones?
Grace Jones entered the fashion scene like a blade through satin. Unexpected, necessary, unforgettable. Her buzz cut gleamed like a crown. Latex clung like warning signs. Her silence hit harder than any scream. At Studio 54, she didn't dance. She stalked the floor like prey owed her respect. She didn't beg for attention. She cornered it.
Internet, so a lot of people are going, look at this, look at this, look at that. And I don't...
Her stare could snap a lens. Her posture said, approach, but don't assume. Designers whispered her name like a spell. Armani said, she doesn't wear clothes, she devours them. And he was right. Grace didn't want approval. She wanted dominance. Her walk didn't seduce. It threatened. But beneath the angles, the attitude, and that voice like velvet wrapped in brass was a girl once told to be quiet. Grace wasn't born terrifying. She had to build herself into something the world couldn't break.
I believe in that.
Do you?
Yes, as a religion for my physical and mental survival.
Because what they saw was power. What they missed was the fight it took to own it. Early life. Zong Grace Jones wasn't born in neon lights. She was born in Spanish Town, Jamaica in 1948. Her father, Julius Jones, was a preacher with thunder in his voice and rules carved in stone. His sermons echoed like warnings through their house. Her mother, Marjorie, or Marge, Jones, was a seamstress by trade and a singer by heart. She hummed lullabies in sharp soprano that always cracked at the end. Grace was the eldest of three, her younger brothers Patrick and Vince learning mischief as she learned silence. Their home smelled of starched collars and sweet potato pie. Walls hung low with bright curtains meant to hide no secrets. Grace, far too tall for her age and far too loud inside, remembered banging on pots, pretending they were drums that needed her command. But everyone told her to be quiet. Girls, stay calm, her father said. And yet, inside her chest, Marge heard something else, a rhythm too grand for hushed tones. At 6 years old, Grace invented a childhood ritual. She'd sneak into the backyard, strip off her shoes, and balance on broken bricks, her makeshift stage. She'd belt out Marge's lullabies, stomping one foot, bending the other, until the mango blossoms trembled above her. This was where she felt power, or thought she did. By 8, Marge began teaching Grace to sew, patchwork dresses and ribboned headbands stitched with intent. It wasn't just fabric, it was armor. Grace preferred dark cotton, sturdy thread, the kind that wouldn't tear under strain. She wore those homemade outfits to school and stood out anyway. Taller, sharper, a living name tag that screamed, "You cannot ignore me." At 13, her parents sent her to Syracuse, New York for better schooling. She arrived in the snow like a tropical storm, swaddled in Marge's quilts, but out of place in wool gloves and stiff uniforms. She didn't smile. She observed. She noticed how softness could be weaponized, how a glance could silence a bully before the body even knew to run. Grace threw herself into drama class, memorizing lines with the same focus she'd once used on Marge's lullabies. After school, she would retell Jamaican folktales to anyone who listened, her voice climbing, falling, pulsing. Shadow plays in dorm rooms, mango-scented memories became her first acting rehearsals. When the teacher whispered, "You're intense," she bowed her head, not in shame, but because intensity could be sharpened into truth. So while the world expected silence, she practiced projection, not yet daring to roar, but rehearsing it, one hushed syllable at a time. First love, heartbreak, fall. She was 16 when Danny Smith came into her life, slim, quiet, with eyes darker than Jamaican night. He worked evenings at the diner on Syracuse Street, flipping burgers and humming blues. Grace found him in the back booth, sketching faces on napkins, scribbling lines next to her reflection. He didn't say much, but his silence had space, like an echo her wildness wanted to nestle into. They met under fluorescent lights, over shared fries and chocolate shakes. She wore her mother's patchwork coat. He traced the stitches with his pencil. "I like lines," he said. She smirked. "I am all lines." That phrase made him smile, softly. Slowly, he became her calm. After drama rehearsals, she'd find him waiting outside the stage door, handing her a pencil-sketched portrait titled Queen of Lightning. She held it like armor. Their relationship was unspoken, lingering between pauses. He'd say, "I get you," and she believed it. She showed him Marjorie's sewing room, the mango tree in their yard, the broken bricks she still practiced on. He listened, eyes steady. He called her Storm, and she liked how fear and awe sounded together. Then, everything shifted. One evening after a small play, she found a photo on her pillow. Of herself, yes, but smoothed, cheeks softened, lips lighter. Storm turned calm. Underneath, his message, "Better this way." The sting was immediate. Her Storm recoiled. She smashed the frame on the dresser, shards of glass slicing the table like tiny lightning bolts. He came back that night, empty-handed, regretful. She didn't yell. She whispered, "You changed me. I changed, not for you." He nodded, eyes damp, and she walked out into the snow, her coat done up tight, the cold more honest than his words. Her heartbreak wasn't cinematic. It was stillness, a gasp in darkness, a hush with your lungs full. It sent her back to Marja's sewing room, to her broken brick stage. She replaced patchwork with charcoal black leather. She sewed new lines into her coats, sharper than before. Soon after, she walked into a casting call wearing that leather and Storm in her eyes. No smile, no apology. The director didn't just notice her, he paused. She'd learned something powerful. Softness could be edited, but what remained? That Storm, untouched, that intensity preserved. She never spoke of Danny again, but her jewelry box held one pencil sketch, smudged at the edges, defiant in the center. It wasn't heartbreak alone that shaped her. It was the realization that true power wasn't avoiding damage. It was surviving it and wearing the scars like badges. Grace Jones didn't fold. She refolded the world around her.
Guy, and you should have really turned him, not just hit him, but turn over his chair and turn over the table and everything, because he really treats people badly.
Yeah.
I mean, he's always rude to his guests. I mean, this is how he gets off.
So you just...
And, yeah.
So you zapped him, huh?
And stood straight inside it. Reinvention, iconic route. Grace Jones didn't just rebuild herself after heartbreak. She redefined the entire blueprint of power and presence. At 18, fresh off her emotional fracture, she stepped into Paris. Not as a model, not yet a singer, but as a challenge. She cut her hair into a buzz cut, shaved her eyebrows, and walked into Yves Saint Laurent's showroom wearing her mother's handmade patchwork dress reimagined in jet black leather. Cameras froze. Assistants whispered. Grace simply held the room with her stillness. Then came Studio 54. Armed with razor-sharp cheekbones and that Storm in her eyes, she didn't ask to be noticed, she announced she belonged. Dressed in a tuxedo jacket, nothing underneath, she prowled the floor under strobes. Andy Warhol saw her. He offered her a role in his next art piece. Grace nodded once, expression calm. She didn't need the spotlight. She became it. Her first album, Portfolio, landed like a declaration. Disco with Danger. Cover shoot? A series of stark images, Grace framed against white, face half hidden in shadow, wearing metallic chains. The music and imagery were inseparable. Listen and look at the same time. MTV didn't know what to do with it. Grace didn't care. It was John Paul Good who taught her myth-making. Together, they choreographed physics-defying poses. Her magazine covers became architectural studies. Cheekbones that vaulted, neck that elongated, jaw that cut air. She wore latex Stockholm style, hats that looked like sculpture, and strobe-lit paint that made her look otherworldly. She became fashion's built environment. The reinvention had layers. First, break expectations. Then, ignore them. Then invent your own. She performed topless in a cage at the Palladium in NYC, body painted and fearless. She walked runways for Mugler and Halston, each time bringing her techno-tribal aesthetic, shoulder pads that extended 2 feet, boots taller than her fear, and makeup that resembled armor, not decoration. She didn't wear clothes, she grew them. Acting came next. She starred in Conan the Destroyer and A View to Kill. Villainous, magnetic, absolutely unclassifiable. She didn't play characters, she inhabited them, folding their landscapes into her silhouette, then folding them into her own legend. A key moment, Venice Film Festival. She appeared in a hat shaped like wings. No explanation given. Press tried to interpret. She lifted the hat, silence. Then she turned and walked away. The moment dominated headlines for weeks. Grace Jones didn't use reinvention as a weapon. She wielded it as a mission statement. If you don't build space for yourself, you'll never fit in someone else's. By her early 30s, she'd captured modeling, music, acting, nightlife, and performance art. She didn't break glass ceilings, she vaporized them, leaving reflections of herself that couldn't be contained. Icons aren't created, they're engineered layer by layer, contradiction by contradiction, and Grace Jones was her own engineer. Style, activism, values. Grace Jones didn't just dress to be seen, she dressed to be remembered. Her wardrobe was a declaration, not decoration. One look could stop traffic, shift power, or rewrite the rules. In Tokyo's neon haze, she wore a cage-like latex dress and nothing else. No stage lights, no backup dancers, just her and the audience's collective gasp. That outfit wasn't for attention. It was a manifesto. Control, clarity, and command. Grace's style was never for comfort. It was for conquest. Her clothes called out expectations and tore them apart. A triangle-shaped silk dress one night, chains and oil the next. At hot couture shows, she arrived in suits with oversized shoulders so sharp that they cast shadows like wings. She called her style techno-tribal, a future rooted in ancestral power with each seam and silhouette screaming autonomy. She weaponized fashion for visibility. At a chanter entrance, she wore a rhinestone jacket declaring, "Black is beautiful." Soft elegance met hard resistance. Instead of whispering her message, she blasted it in Swarovski. It silenced the room before she even walked in. But Grace wasn't just about image. She stood for substance. In apartheid-era South Africa, while most artists bowed to business opportunities, Jones said no. No concerts, no contracts, no compromise. Her refusal wasn't headline-grabbing. It was earth-moving. She showed that fame could unite with principle. When the fashion industry tried to bleach her image for mainstream appeal, she leaned into her darkness. Darker foundation, glossier lips, bolder lines. Every makeup choice a rebuke. She didn't soften for whitewashed audiences. She turned up the contrast, daring the world to understand her power without editing her reality. Motherhood didn't soften her edge, it refined it. When she carried her son Paige onto a red carpet, she wore a latex catsuit and a veil. That image screamed, "I am both parent and presence." It disturbed expectations about mothers, women, and bodies. She showed that nurturing didn't require shrinking. Her values were sewn into her garments daily. She once showed up to a runway in hemp trousers from Jamaica. Locally farmed, sustainable, rooted in her homeland. She wasn't following eco-trends. She was choosing legacy over landfill. Fashion was her stage, activism was her movement. Grace's rituals were as revolutionary as her outfits. Before every show, she lit incense in her dressing room to clear the air and summon clarity. She ironed her own gear, leather, latex, sharp-edged couture, because when you shape power, you shape it personally. She refused stylists who didn't speak her vision. She said, "If it doesn't disrupt, don't wear it." Her wardrobe spoke in metaphors. Shoulder pads, shields in a world built to push her down. Chains, not to bind her, but to show every link she broke. Buzz cut and shaved eyebrows, clear canvas, open statement, no softness required of her. Black lipstick and smoky eyes, a warning and an invitation. Sometimes the same thing.
Legacy legal drama. Present.
Grace Jones never softened with age. She only sharpened. Her legacy isn't just footprints on red carpets. It's deep grooves carved into the heart of fashion, music, and culture. She became a living trademark, and the industry fought to own her image. But she wouldn't let them. In 2005, a luxury brand released ad campaigns featuring a model whose jawline, cheekbones, and walk were unmistakably Grace's. No permission, no acknowledgement, just imitation. Grace sued. She entered the courtroom in full Regime Jones mode, jet black suit, buzz cut gleaming, dark shades reflecting the flashbulbs. She didn't flinch. Documents were laid out like evidence of ownership. Photos, contracts, moments. She declared, "My body is not a symbol unless I say so."
Call me a bitch because I like to be perfect and do what I want to do, you know?
When the judge ruled in her favor, it wasn't just a victory. It was a roar echoing across creative industries and contract rooms. Icons are intellectual property, she had argued, and the law agreed. But she didn't stop there. In creative conversations, she continues to push boundaries. Recent headlines described her as brazen at 74, when, in 2022, Grace performed on the main stage at Coachella. No dancers, no props, just her hips, voice, and a single spotlight that made the world remember she never stepped off the pedestal. She built it herself. On TikTok and Instagram, Gen Z bows when they see her silhouette, shaved head framed by red lightning bolts. Vogue editors reference her style in bullet points. Museum shows open with ancient Grace portraits that look more historic than modern. Every still feels like a treaty. This is power personified. Grace's influence isn't nostalgic, it's structural. Directors made Storm Queen, a Netflix doc that broke records with minutes of interviews we never knew we needed. Moments where Grace laughed about forgetting lyrics, described her mother's patchwork dresses as battle armor, and called her music career a circus where the ringmaster was me. Critics praised it, saying she redefined performance art for a generation. But protests and awards aren't her real markers. It's the unspoken rule in creative rooms. You don't use her jawline unless you signed the waiver. In 2023, she released Control Lines, an EP mixing dub, house, and spoken word. Raw, haunting, unapologetic. She didn't tour. She dropped the album on midnight with minimal promotion. It reached underground charts, inspiring graffiti artists in Brixton and beatboxers in Berlin. At home, she lives between Jamaica and London. She keeps her studio in a reclaimed warehouse with bare brick walls. No chandeliers, no glitz. Just a microphone, vintage mixers, and a mop from her childhood house in Spanish Town. Grace sweeps the floor herself, brushes dust from vinyl covers, and hums syncopated rhythms that won't quit. Presence isn't a performance, it's permanence. She mentors rising artists in unannounced meetups. No press, no agendas. One young singer described Grace resting her hand on his shoulder and saying, "Sing it like the world owes you an apology." That moment went viral. No record deal followed, just human code igniting confidence. Industry insiders now refer to the Grace Clause, a legal concept acknowledging artist image rights that was directly inspired by her court case. It protects shapes, silhouettes, and savage attitude, because Grace Jones taught them they're not just aesthetics, they're identity. She once said in an interview, they wanted to archive chaos, but chaos regenerated. That, more than any camera flash, defines her today. Grace Jones didn't retreat into legacy. She remixed it, lived it, and trademarked it. In a world that keeps trying to catch up, she stays 2 steps ahead, teaching anyone who listens that icons aren't found. Icons are forged. Style, philosophy, beliefs. Grace Jones didn't follow fashion. She fractured it. Her philosophy was simple. Style should disrupt, not decorate. She wore blazers sharper than most men's resumes and bodysuits that looked like armor forged in a dream. She said, if it's expected, burn it. Gender was never the blueprint. She wore 3-piece suits with red lips, chains with couture, power with elegance. Her favorite color? Black. She said, it's not empty. It's full of choices. She never followed seasons or designers. She followed feeling. One day, a priest's robe and stilettos. The next, a metallic thong and a sky-high mohawk. Each look said, I'm not here to fit in, I'm here to electrify. Her scent was musk and incense. Her ritual was lighting candles before fittings. Her belief that style is a frequency, and you either catch it or get left behind. To Grace, getting dressed wasn't about beauty, it was about impact. Because where others wore outfits, Grace wore echoes. Legacy 2025 update. In 2025, Grace Jones doesn't walk red carpets, she hovers over their memory. She lives between Port Antonio's misted cliffs and a London townhouse she shares with her husband, Marcus or Mark Reed, a set designer whose curated chaos mirrors her own. No paparazzi, no PR spin. Their mornings begin with incense, old vinyl like night clubbing, and shared mugs of black coffee. Yet in Couture, she's louder than ever. Their daughter Naomi, now 14, draws on Kansas by the sea. She sketches Grace's iconic shoulders, whispering, "Mama, I want to walk like that." Grace smiles, seeing her legacy learned, not inherited. Her silhouette continues as a living code. Designers call sharp tailoring Mark and Grace shapes. TikTok makeup artists recreate her jawline geometry. Students in Berlin shadow her runway walk. Vogue uses her images as teaching tools on presence and posture. A slow-motion NFT of her walk, barefoot, steel-backed, sold out in under a minute. No words, just evidence that presence is currency. She doesn't perform on big stages, but she resurfaces in unexpected places. Pop-up shows at midnight warehouses that Mark decorates in stark lights and sculpted backdrops. No press, just heartbeat anticipation. In Port Antonio, their villa is also a studio temple. The burnished cage from her 1979 Pull Up to the Bumper tour sits beside Marcus's set designs, both artifacts of rebellion. Grace hums new beats as Mark inspects sketches, and Naomi spills paint at their feet. Her son? Grace and Mark had only Naomi, but in mentorship, she considers all the artists she's guided as family. One of them, a young DJ named Kai, calls her Aunt Grace, and drops his first EP this year, stamped with her advice. Don't make music for them, make them live. Her legacy isn't archives, it's ancestry. When Storm Queen, her 2023 Netflix doc, premiered, she appeared on screen donning mirrored sunglasses beside Mark. She said, "I never left, I just led." Her presence didn't need apology or explanation. Now, no memoir, no revival tour, just legacy cascades into family, culture, and silent rebellion. She once said to Naomi, "You don't wear history, you carry it." And that's what she's done, with Marcus by her side, Naomi in her home, and every blueprint of boldness she left unlocked. Because Grace didn't fade, she generated echoes. And everywhere there's a girl standing impossibly still, jaw sharp, gaze still like steel, she's stepping into Grace's shadow and daring the world not to flinch.